Listen to me back now.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. So what the heck is happening to Butcher? Is he a soup? Did he get his powers back? Something very strange is going on with his brain cancer. So we're going to explain what the heck is going on with Butcher, his new powers, and how these new abilities are connected to his brain cancer. And have you seen this new, totally badass Nirvana soup baby shirt that we just designed for our merch store? It's a parody of the famous Nirvana album cover and a tribute to one of the most messed up scenes ever in The Boys.
That was diabolical.
We even have diabolical written in the Nevermind font here. We also have this amazing Butchie shirt parodying Butcher in the Punisher's first appearance, and this one that parodies the cover of Captain America issue 1 with Soldier Boy calling Hitler a disappointment.
You're a f***ing disappointment.
Guys, I love capitalism, and our boys shirts at our merch store are the perfect celebrations of the fully rewarding consumer-driven lifestyle that we Americans all enjoy. Shopping our merch store is the best way to support our channel and for you to fight against the evildoers. So, support your country. Buy things. The link is below. Now guys, Butcher does not have an ordinary tumor. The thing inside of him has mutated from the V, and everything that is happening to Butcher is connected to it, including his hallucinations. And get this, Becca is not the only hallucination. And that thing in his head isn't just giving Butcher powers, it might influence him to embrace his inner diabolical urges and become the very thing he hates. An evil soup psychopath.
You don't get to quit. Get up!
The fourth episode of The Boys Season 4 is one of the most disturbing hours of television I have ever watched. But everything that happens with Homelander aside, let's focus on Butcher. Butcher fights Ezekiel in Firecracker's trailer, but Mr. Stretchy Arms takes Butcher down and he's about to kill him. Butcher blacks out, and when he comes to, he sees that Ezekiel blew up like a balloon.
So how did he kill him?
Well, at the end of the episode, when Butcher talks Huey out of giving his dad V, Butcher reveals that he took V 4 months ago. He has terminal brain cancer, which is the result of all the V24 that he took last season.
Look at that big black mass curdling around your brain.
This is why Butcher is hallucinating Becca, and he might be seeing some other people who aren't actually there, and we'll circle back to that in just a moment. But the cancer wasn't cured, and Butcher didn't get any powers, at least not ones he's aware of. When Butcher took Temp V in Season 3, he could shoot lasers from his eyes. So, him taking V might have reawakened those dormant abilities.
But how does he still have those powers?
Well, maybe he took so much Temp V last season that it actually altered his DNA, and some of that V is still in his system. After all, it did give him cancer. It would make sense that he got those abilities back because every time Butcher and Huey were shooting Temp V, they retained the same powers. But it doesn't look like Butcher lasered Ezekiel. There are no burn marks anywhere. The scene is way too gory, so we can't show it here, but it looks like Ezekiel is torn apart. It's just all over the trailer.
Maybe some type of explosion?
Of course there's gonna be an explosion! You think I'm not gonna explode?
But in case you forgot, laser eyes aren't the only power he got from V24. Butcher also had super strength and super durability. And those are the go-to abilities that pretty much every soup has by default, except for those losers who just shoot guns really accurately.
Bullseye.
So this is how he could throw down with Homelander and Soldier Boy. So if I had to guess, Butcher probably would have been able to fly just like Homelander. But I guess he didn't unlock that power in the skill tree just yet. Anyways, if taking V gave Butcher his powers back, then he probably ripped Ezekiel apart with his super muscles. So that dose of V is now turning him into a full-blown soup.
Until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Except there's something else going on here. Butcher passed out, so how did he kill Ezekiel when he wasn't in control of his own body?
Okay, so what the heck happened?
Well, remember, Butcher has some sort of tumor or cancer in his brain, but it's not a regular tumor. We actually see it moving around underneath his skin. So the tumor is behaving like a parasite, slithering around his brain like those bugs from The Mummy.
Do something! Not that, not that!
When Butcher fights for his life, Becca appears, and just then the parasite under his skin starts crawling all over his face, and the screen cuts to black and we just hear... So whatever happened when Butcher lost consciousness wasn't in his control. The thing in his head might be more than just brain cancer, it might be a souped up parasite.
What, like a superworm in his head?
Exactly. Butcher took some V, not a lot, but it was enough to mutate the cancer in his head, turning it into a super parasite that's wrapped around his brain.
I'm just seeing things, just not real. You're in my head because you're just a parasite.
Parasite?
And in this fight with Ezekiel, the tumor took control and activated Butcher's new abilities. And this is not as crazy as it sounds. Something like this already exists in the Boys universe. It actually happens in Diabolical, the animated spinoff. In episode 7, a woman called Sun-Hee is dying from pancreatic cancer. Her husband John injects her with the V and it cures the cancer. And she gets powers in the form of these energy tentacles that start attacking and killing everyone. But it turns out that these are not regular superpowers. The V mutated Sun-Hee's cancer, transforming it into a living entity that protects her body with the tentacles. And eventually it bursts out of her body, becoming a separate entity. It keeps mutating and becomes a tentacle monster that might be powerful enough to even kill Homelander. And despite the super cancer leaving her body, Sun-Hee still has some other abilities and she fights the entity.
So that superworm thingy is gonna burst out of Butcher like an alien?
That would be pretty gnarly. But V influences people in different ways. Anyone who's injected with V gets powers, but the powers vary. So what happened to Sun-Hee isn't necessarily going to repeat with Butcher's parasite. That being said, the mixture of V, the remnants of Temp V, and the tumor are going to trigger some type of crazy mutation. And you have to wonder what this means for Huey's dad after he was injected with V. He woke up and probably has powers now. Anyways, Butcher is hallucinating Becca. The hallucinations are the result of the tumor in his head, but it might also be a mixture of psychological manifestations. And it looks like Becca serves as his conscience. In the first episode, Butcher made a deal with Victoria Newman, but before he betrays his team, Becca convinces him to remain loyal to his friends. But Becca isn't the only voice in Butcher's head.
Are you saying he sees more dead people?
Yes, and that's Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, Joe Kessler.
I'm Negan.
The CIA agent and Butcher's old war buddy who shows up out of nowhere. Joe and Butcher are very like-minded, although Joe is way more extreme, which is how Butcher used to be in his darkest moments.
We need someone like you, Billy, before the soups start rounding us up and dumping us off in camps.
In fact, the show's creator, Eric Kripke, even describes Joe as another Butcher. It's a very interesting choice of words. Butcher is the only one who interacts with Joe. We never see him with any of the other characters, and Butcher doesn't even mention him to anyone else. When they share old war stories, Joe mentions how Butcher dragged him out of some mess, saving his life. But I don't think that actually happened. Butcher didn't save him, and Joe died 11 years ago.
So did Butcher forget?
Yes, or to be exact, the brain cancer made him forget, and he now believes that his old war buddy is still alive. But Joe isn't just a figment of Butcher's imagination. When Butcher comes to from his blackout, he sees that somehow Ezekiel is cut to ribbons. Sort of like when Wanda killed Mr. Fantastic, only much, much nastier. Speaking of the MCU, by the way, this scene also reminded me a lot of Moon Knight.
Wait, why are we talking about the MCU to me right now?
Oh, it's connected to our theory, trust me. Mark Spector suffers from dissociative identity disorder. Each one of his alters has a distinct personality. In the final fight in the show, Mark is about to be killed by his enemy. He blacks out, but then when he wakes up, all of the bad guys are defeated. Mark's other persona, Jake Lockley, took over and killed all the baddies. And this scene immediately jumped to my mind after what happened to Butcher. So what we're getting to here is that the tumor in Butcher's brain somehow mutated into a separate entity of a different persona. And that is Joe. And when Joe takes over, Butcher's abilities activate without him actually being in control. So what we think is happening is that Joe is like Butcher's Tyler Durden. The tumor manifested itself in the form of a man from Butcher's past, someone who shares Butcher's darkest demons and his darkest views on the world. Actually, considering Joe's age, he might even have been a mentor to Billy before he died. This symbolizes the fact that deep down, Butcher wants to give in to this darkness so he can kill Homelander at any cost. Now, Becca represents the one good thing from his past. Actually, with Becca being his moral compass and Joe representing his darkest urges and thoughts, it's like Butcher has an angel and a devil on his shoulders. While everyone else in his life tries to pull him into being less of an asshole, Joe is the one who pushes him to do more, well, Butcher stuff.
Either we figure out how to train him, or we figure out how to kill him.
Butcher has come a long way since how he was in Season 1, but Joe is the person that is hidden deep inside of Butcher, the man who still suffers from childhood trauma and guilt. As a dying man, Butcher is filled with regret. Butcher had his best shot to end Homelander with Soldier Boy, but Ryan was in harm's way, so Butcher's conscience forced him to go against the mission and fight Soldier Boy.
But you had a clean shot at him, right? With Soldier Boy. You didn't take it. Was your eye on the ball?
But Homelander has Ryan now, and the whole world is on fire, and Butcher just has no time to fix anything. But with his fragile mental state and the mutating tumor, Butcher pulled Joe from his past. A no BS, do whatever it takes, kill anyone who stands in your way to finish the mission kind of guy. Joe wanted to use Ryan as a weapon to kill Homelander, something that the old Butcher totally would have done.
That is exactly what you are.
And this is fitting. In Season 3, when Butcher takes V-24, he becomes just like Homelander. But in Season 4, he becomes like Homelander in a different way. They both suffer from deep childhood trauma, they have split personalities, and they want to be a father figure to Ryan. And now that Butcher is a soup, he might have a completely different mindset moving forward. Like he says here,
With great power comes the absolute certainty that you'll turn into a right.
which brings us back to Butcher's powers, because we don't think that Butcher got back his Temp V abilities. He probably has whole new powers.
Upgrades.
When Ezekiel has Butcher pinned down, he passes out and Joe takes over. Now, like we've mentioned before, just before Butcher passes out, the parasite starts crawling around his skin. So that parasite in his head is the source of his abilities. The tumor absorbed most of the V and it mutated, becoming a separate, self-conscious parasite that now feeds on Butcher's body. When the host is under attack, meaning the body, Joe takes over and unleashes Butcher's latent abilities.
That kind of sounds like Venom.
Something very similar to that, although the parasite isn't an alien and Butcher isn't getting a symbiote suit.
We're Venom!
But you might be onto something. Butcher might actually have similar powers to Eddie Brock when he doesn't have the suit on. So it's kind of like these goo tendrils, or to be more precise, tentacles. And then again, there's precedent to this because of what happened to Sun-Hee in Diabolical. Her cancer mutated into a tentacle monster, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the animated show depicted what happens when a cancer patient gets injected with V. It might have been a foreshadowing to show what's happening to Butcher in Season 4. So going back to that scene from Episode 4, I could totally see Joe taking over with these tentacles bursting out of Butcher's body to rip Ezekiel apart. Or, similar to Sun-Hee, when Joe takes over, the super cancer inside Butcher bursts out of his head or chest, kills Ezekiel, and then goes back into the body.
That was diabolical!
Okay, I admit, the tentacles are mostly based on what happens in Diabolical, and it doesn't mean that Butcher's powers are going to be the same. The boys already has Mouth Tentacle Girl and Love Sausage.
That's not a tentacle person, that's his little wiener.
Yeah, I got it. We all know exactly what it is.
Well, that?
It's okay. Don't be so close-minded.
So when Joe takes over, it could just be super strength or even telekinesis. I gotta be honest, seeing Butcher move stuff around with his brain cancer is gonna be kind of badass. Anyways, if Joe is going to be a type of Tyler Durden, this means that in the next few episodes, Joe will keep gaining more and more control over Butcher. And don't forget, the trailers tease that there is a soup virus. This is the virus that was first introduced in the Boys spinoff, Gen V. Now, we've mentioned this in our previous video, so we're going to keep it short. But basically, in Gen V, there was a virus that was developed in a lab, and it can kill soups. The virus is highly contagious, and the people who created it were planning to turn it into a full-blown soup pandemic.
Can't we make it airborne?
Why?
So it's more contagious.
But before that happened, Newman took the virus and killed the scientist who created it. Now, this virus had a pretty small role in Gen V. It was mostly to set up the plot for The Boys Season 4. In the post-credits scene of Gen V, Butcher investigates the lab where the virus was created. So he will obviously want to get his hands on the virus. I don't think Butcher wants to kill every soup, probably just Homelander and Newman. But if Joe keeps taking over his mind, he will push Butcher to weaponize the virus against all soups, triggering a global soup genocide. And this is going to pit Butcher against his team, because they might be down for killing Newman and Homelander, but they won't stand for a massacre. After all, two of them are soups themselves. But with Butcher's new powers and that parasite in his mind that forces him to do evil things, he won't let his team stand in his way. So by the end of Season 4, Butcher's mind might be taken completely over by Joe, and he might become a villain himself. So what we might actually see go down is the boys forced to use the virus to kill Butcher, because it will be the only way to stop him from killing all soups. That would be seriously tragic, and I hope it's not how Butcher goes out. So hopefully the team figures out a way to prevent Butcher from going on a rampage, and that key would be Ryan. He might help Butcher overcome and defeat Joe, his inner evil self, and then they could all stop Homelander in Season 5. And then Butcher can use his new powers to kill Homelander. So guys, this is our theory about what is happening to Butcher. Do you think he's got tentacle monster powers, or is it some other new abilities? Big shout out to the writer and editor of this video, Pavel T. You can find his links below, and don't forget to check out our merch store for this incredible Diabolical Laser Baby shirt. And guys, let us know what you think down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.